It is the Morning Magazine here on News Talk 1150, 97.5 KRMS. And as we always do here on Thursday mornings at about 10:15 or so, we check in with David Stokes with the Show Me Institute. We call this segment Show Me at the Lake. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning, Manny. I'm doing great. And as always, it's awesome to be online with you and all your listeners.
Well, I'm glad you're able to join us here again, and we're going to start off the conversation today with something that you and I have talked about in the past because it's come up a few times on the Show Me at the Lake segment here, and that is when different government entities go to the people through the ballot box to ask them questions about money. And the Mid-County Fire District, they are getting ready to do just that on Tuesday. They're asking the voters for a 12-cent tax levy increase. Now, this is a kind of unusual because it's not for anything new. It's not for any new personnel. But this is just to literally keep their heads above water. Your thoughts on this tax levy increase question?
Well, look, a 12-cent increase is certainly not a large tax increase as these things go, and a current 26-cent per $100 of assessed valuation levy is not high either. I mean, these are not large numbers we're talking about. I ran them, and for a 12-cent increase, if you own a $200,000 home in the Lake Ozark area within that fire district, you're going to see about a $46 tax increase. And if you own a $10,000 car, it's going to come to about $4. So for the average homeowner who has a car, you're talking $50 a year. And so that's what I want your listeners to know, so that they can make up their mind and say, we get this level of service from our fire district. I either want to keep it, I want better service, or I think we can do with a little bit less of it, and they can sort of weigh that in put into about the $50 dollars and cents. Obviously, for more valuable homes, that's going to go up a little bit. But by comparison, in all honesty, it's not a particularly large tax increase.
Now, given the political climate, though, isn't it advantageous sometimes for different groups like fire departments, police departments, ambulance districts, whoever it might be, going to the public and saying, hey, we need more money?
Well, it is, and it's certainly advantageous to do it in these sort of rare special elections like November in an odd year. And then we're seeing that around the state with a few other sort of major elections, particularly in the Kansas City area. But so I never really like putting these ballot questions on at times where absolutely certain that voter turnout is going to be tiny. And so I don't think that's good policy. And I would generally hope that these ballot questions be held for the April local ballot race that we have every year in Missouri. I think that's a better place for them.
And I know every entity struggles with this question. Where do we put the question on the ballot? Sometimes it's just it takes them a while to get the legalese, if you want to call it that, in order and get all the documents and everything and filed and whatnot. So it's not always a situation of where people go, well, we want this election over this time of year. But it is interesting when you get into these, kind of off-year, only one question on the ballot type situations. You are kind of rolling the dice.
You are, and who's going to turn? Do the anti-tax activists show up, or do the employees and family members of the fire district show up? Who are the ones who are going to show up there? I think, generally speaking, some local governments like to hold these things. They don't put them on November of even year elections, generally speaking, where they know that due to the extremely high turnout, the odds of passage go down a little bit. So I would guess that the difference in money raised between November of this year and April of 2014 would be extraordinarily small. I mean, most of the tax bills have already gone out. I can't imagine, and perhaps I'm wrong here, but I cannot imagine that this tax increase is going to be seen in 2013 tax bills. So if you don't see it until 2014, when you get your additional money from then what's the difference between imposing it now and in April of next year? And I would propose that it's extraordinarily small.
Does the amount of an increase determine sometimes in the mind of a voter, I'm going to vote yes or I'm going to vote no? For example, there are sometimes they'll put like a 5-cent increase on a ballot. In this case, when you get into double digits, can that be confusing for voters?
Well, I hope that the voters can tell what is large and what is small. I think that's one of the reasons sales tax increases generally pass around the state, is that the number on the ballot appears so small when you're talking about a quarter of a cent or an eighth of a cent or even lower. People just look at that number and it's tiny, whereas in property taxes the numbers can appear much larger. And we certainly see school district or fire district tax increases around the state of a much larger than a 12 cents. I think in one St. Louis County suburb next week they're voting on a 99-cent increase for some of the property within their district. So 12 cents I think will strike the average voter as fairly small, which it in fact is.
In the grand scheme of things, I guess. And sometimes, though, I think people do get sometimes caught up in the dollars and cents. And in this case with the fire district has been very forthcoming. And they've said, quite honestly, if we don't get this increase, we may have to look at how we do things differently. We may have to put in some new plans because this is just, again, as we said in the opening, it's not for anything new. This is just literally to just keep them operating.
Right, and I read a good article on it at Lake News Online, and it was sort of almost humorous because they mentioned a couple things that might have to be cut. And the first one was training for firemen, and obviously that's very important. But the second one was the intern program. And I don't know if that's going to strike most voters as something incredibly important to justify a tax increase. I can't imagine that the interns at the fire district are actually in there fighting fires. I certainly hope they're not. So a tax increase to keep the intern program, I don't know if that was quite the best example they could have given to justify this 12-cent increase. I think the focus from their perspective should be much more on continued and future training of their firemen, which is, I think, a much better reason to potentially raise your taxes.
Well, we will see what the voters have to say. They head to the polls on Tuesday in Camden County, and that is the only question on the ballot. We're talking with David Stokes from the Show Me Institute here on this week's Show Me at the Lake on News Talk 1150 and 97.5 KRMS. Now, something interesting that we talked about a little bit, and I don't think we brought it up here on this program before, but I know it is something that you all have discussed there at the Show Me Institute before, is this entire idea of what's known as a film credit here in the state of Missouri as it pertains to taxes. And it's interesting you bring this up because a few years ago, that was it was starting to become a big deal in the state of Missouri because it was starting to actually draw some pretty big Hollywood names to the state for shooting big budget movies. And, the tax credits went away and so did the movies.
Well, the tax credit is now up for renewal next year. It still exists. It hasn't gone away. I think they extended it, but it goes away in 2014. They just actually used it to shoot a film in Cape Girardeau. But I absolutely think that this is one of the tax credits that the state needs to be done with. It is not good policy to take your money, my money, and other Missourians' money to give to private companies just to shoot a film in Missouri for a few weeks or months to have a very temporary, short-term, and usually small economic benefit to an area, whereas every year you're taking other Missourians' money to sort of bring them in. I mean, why is the film industry special? Why don't we have special tax credits for more radio stations or for the concert industry? I mean, the fact that these sort of lobbyists for the film industry have been successful around the country in getting states to offer other people's money is, I think, it's very poor policy. And when we saw the data from up in the air, what the film tax credits were used for, to reimburse or to offset the cost to the producers for the hotels and the restaurants and the bar tabs of the actors and actresses there, I mean, that's just infuriating.
Well, and you look at I guess, honestly, the reason why we talk about this is because you pertain it to other parts of what you call economic development. And there are those that say, well, you have to throw out these carrots or else you can't draw this. And then when you look at development in a particular county or city, you go, well, we have to have a TIF or we have to have an EEZ or else, we won't get that development. This is another one of those situations where where those that support the film industry in Missouri Missouri said, well, if we don't do this, then the movies are just going to go away.
Right, and I would say let other state taxpayers subsidize those films, and then Missourians can go watch them at the theater and be better off in the long run. There's no reason why we need to take money from Missourians, and that's what tax credits do. These companies come to Missouri, and there's up to $4.5 million a year in tax credits that can be distributed. And if they film here, they recover eligible costs where they get this tax credit, which is worth 35% of tax liability. Now, of course, these companies have very small Missouri tax liabilities, so what they do is the same as with other tax credits, and they go and they resell them on the market. So they don't really use it on their own taxes. They go and sell them to people who do have tax liability. And I just think it's terrible public policy for somebody in Jefferson City to decide that the film industry, like some other specially treated industries, but unlike most others, gets this special tax treatment that we other taxpayers around the state have to put up their money to bring these filmmakers here, which will have short-term temporary benefits in small locations when they shoot a film. I mean, if we're going to be subsidizing something, and we do it way too often for way too many things, but at least it should be aimed at sort of long-term capital projects that can benefit the area for a long time. Much of this spending just goes to pay extras for a few days or to support the hotels and bars and restaurants in the area. It's a poor waste of public resources.
So a $10 million question for you, and I've got to have you to, put on your Merlin hat and look in your crystal ball here. Is this going to be the legislative session that this body in Jefferson City starts tackling this entire issue of tax credits?
Well, I hope so, and I think the fact that the film tax credit is up for renewal this year, meaning it's, as I understand it, it's going to zero. It's going to go away if the legislature doesn't renew it. I hope that proves the impetus to sort of force them into action. And in the case of the film tax credit, I guess I would support inaction and not renewing it. But if they can use this as a jumping off point to tackle tax credit and TIF reform and the other things that this state so badly needs, then I think that could be a great success of the 2014 legislature.
Well, we will see. The filing for House bills is actually a couple of weeks away. That'll be December 1st will be the first day that bills can be filed by state representatives and also state senators as they get ready for the start of their new session in January. David Stokes with the Show Me Institute in St. Louis. As always, thank you so much for the time and the visit on this week's edition of Show Me at the Lake. Please give us your web address and then also other contact information if folks would like to find out some more information.
You can read a lot on film tax credits and other related issues at showmeinstitute.org, and you can follow me on Twitter at David C. Stokes.
David Stokes with the Show Me Institute. Thank you again, sir, and we will visit next Thursday here on News Talk KRMS.